Leviticus 15. And Yudhe spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, When any man has a discharge from his body, his discharge is unclean. Now, I'm not sure if that's a semen discharge, because that's addressed later from verse 16, as well as later on the woman with her discharge, a period. So, this discharge could be coming from any part of the body. It's just a discharge from their body. And verse 3 says, And this shall be his uncleanness in regard to his discharge, whether his body runs with his discharge or his body is stopped up by this discharge. It is his uncleanness. Every bed is unclean or defiled on which he who has the discharge lies, and everything on which he sits shall be unclean. And whoever touches his bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. He who sits on anything on which he who has the discharge sat shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. Verse 7. And he who touches the body of him who has the discharge shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. If he who has the discharge spits on him who is unclean, then he shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And I think it's because we don't know what's in that spit or that saliva that is affecting his body. Verse 9, Any saddle on which he who has the discharge rides shall be unclean. Whoever touches anything that was under him shall be unclean until evening. He who carries any of those things shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And whomever the one who has the discharge touches, and has not rinsed his hands in water, he shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. Now I want you to just listen to all the things that one shouldn't do, one is not allowed to do, because he's considered unclean. And here's touching and washing is constantly mentioned. Verse 12, The vessel of earth that he who has the discharge touches shall be broken, and every vessel of wood shall be rinsed in water. So this is how severe this discharge is looked upon. And when he who has a discharge is cleansed of his discharge, then he shall count for himself 7 days for his cleansing, wash his clothes, and bathe his body in running water. Very important that it's running water, so any uncleanness can be washed away, and he's not sitting in it like in a bathtub. Then he shall be clean. On the 8th day he shall take for himself 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and come before the Lord, or Yudhe, to the door of the tabernacle of meeting, and give them to the priest. Then the priest shall offer them, the one as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering. So the priest shall make atonement for him before Yudhe because of his discharge. Verse 16, If any man has an emission of semen, then he shall wash all his body in water, and be unclean until evening. Any garment and any leather on which there is semen, it shall be washed with water, and be unclean until evening. Also, when a woman lies with a man, and there is an emission of semen, they shall bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. If a woman has a discharge, and the discharge from her body is blood, she shall be set apart 7 days, and whoever touches her shall be unclean until evening. Everything that she lies on during her impurity shall be unclean. Also, everything that she sits on shall be unclean. Whoever touches her bed shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. And whoever touches anything that she sat on shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and be unclean until evening. If anything is on her bed, or on anything on which she sits, When he touches it, he shall be unclean until evening. And if any man lies with her at all, so that her impurity is on him, he shall be unclean or defiled 7 days, and every bed on which he lies shall be unclean. If a woman has a discharge of blood for many days, other than at the time of a customary impurity, in other words, a period as we know it, or if it runs beyond the usual time of impurity, again a period, all the days of her uncleanness, or all the days of her unclean discharge shall be as the days of a customary impurity. She shall be unclean. Every bed on which she lies all the days of her discharge shall be to her as the bed of her impurity. And whatever she sits on shall be unclean as the uncleanness of her impurity. Verse 27. Whoever touches those things shall be unclean. He shall wash his clothes and bathe in water and be unclean until evening. I want you to pay attention to all this. What you've got to do if you even touch the clothes, if someone touches you. Verse 28. But if she is cleansed of her discharge, then she shall count for herself 7 days, and after that she shall be clean. And on the 8th day she shall take for herself 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, and bring them to the priest to the door of the tabernacle of meeting. Then the priest shall offer the one as a sin offering, and the other as a burnt offering. And the priest shall make atonement for her before Yud-Heh-Vaveh, for the discharge of her uncleanness. Thus you shall separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, lest they die in their uncleanness, when they defile my tabernacle that is among them. This is the law for one who has a discharge, and for him who emits semen and is unclean thereby, and for her who is indisposed because of a customary impurity, and for one who has a discharge, either man or woman, for him who lies with her, who is unclean. Now, having just read Leviticus 15, I want to remind you of the story of the woman that had the issue of blood. And this story is relayed in Mark 5 and Luke 8. Mark 5 verses 25 to 34, and then Luke 8, 43 to 48. But this is a woman who has an issue of blood, and what does she do? She goes out in public at the risk of her life, because she could have been stoned. And what does she do? She touches Jesus, which should make Jesus what? Unclean. But what does Jesus do? He asks a question, who touched me? So this tells us that Jesus is completely different in a sense to the other people, because the disciples said, everybody's touching you. Look how the crowd is pushing against you. But he realized something left him, and that something was power, and that was the power to heal this lady. And when this lady came forth, she confessed to what she had done. And Jesus said to her, in Luke, go in peace. And in Mark he adds, and be healed of your infirmity. But then what does Jesus do? Does he then go and wash his garments and whatever? No. He continues on to where he was going, which was to Jairus' daughter who was sick. But now Jairus' daughter has died. And what else can you not do? You cannot go and touch a dead body, because then you're unclean, then you've got to wash again. But what does Jesus do? He goes to and he says, the girl is just sleeping. All the other people think and know she's dead. He says she's just sleeping. Then he puts certain people out the room, and he says to the girl, arise. And then he says to the parents, tell no one. That's in Luke. But then again in Mark, he says, tell no one, and to give her something to eat. So just very, very fascinating. You've got these laws, and you've got Jesus who obeys the laws, who obeys the Father. But that power that is in him just takes all this uncleanness and disease, that it has no effect on him. And instead of the consequences of people touching him that are having an issue of blood, or dead people that come and that he touches, power goes out from him to heal them, restore them. That's what I want for us. Thank you, Lord.